The final hour of Overdrive on this Monday afternoon is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Aaron Korolnek in for Brian Hayes with Frank Corrado, Jamie Noodles McLennan. We'll talk to Chris Rose from the NFL Network in a couple minutes. Crazy day in the NFL, especially when you see a 35-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles, getting a $180 million contract, half of which is guaranteed. That, of course, being Kirk Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons, a very controversial quarterback. Some people love him. Some people hate him. A lot of people in Minnesota hate him and are happy that he's now an Atlanta Falcon. But, man, that's a significant financial commitment to a guy who at 35 is coming off a torn Achilles. That is not the easiest thing to recover from. I understand that we've made significant progression in recovery and medicine over the years, but man, that's a big risk for Atlanta. I still kind of like it for them, though.
I like it for them too. Like it gives them a legitimate number one quarterback, something they haven't had for a long time, and they actually have a pretty good team. And one thing, like I know people are polarized on Kirk Cousins because you can call it primetime issues or issues, winning the big game, but for the majority of the season, the numbers are very good. He knows how to play with good players, like he did it with Jefferson. Like it feels like Kirk Cousins is, what the floor is. It may not be a very high ceiling with him, but at least you know what you're going to get. And at least with him not being the most mobile quarterback to begin with, it's not like he needs to rely on his feet that much. He's going to be a pocket guy, and he's going to be throwing, and he's going to have to rely on a strong run game.
Yeah, and I also think you look at that contract, which is, again, $180 million, $90 million guaranteed, Kirk Cousins with Atlanta, and then you consider what Pittsburgh had to give up for Russell Wilson, a one-year deal at basically the league minimum. It's incredible to consider the contrast between those two deals. And I think Kirk Cousins is better than Russell Wilson. But when you consider saving, $39 million against the salary cap, maybe a little bit more depending on how it ultimately plays out. I mean, Russell Wilson, do I think he's any good? Not really. But, I think he's a competent, maybe an average starter in the NFL. And playing for the league minimum for Pittsburgh, that's got to be considered a home run for them.
I think it is, but I like Kirk Cousins. I don't know if you guys like him or not. He was my favorite quarterback in that quarterback show
like him too, James.
On Netflix.
like that.
Mahomes is all about the show, and I get that. But who was the other guy who quit on his team in Atlanta? There, the guy. With the knee.
It was Mariota.
Mariota. I hated that guy. That guy was so annoying. He didn't want to play. And then the minute they were going to demote him, he was like, check, please. I'm going to Vegas to work on my knee. And that was it, and then he was a backup in Philly, I think, last year. I just didn't care for him. Kirk Cousins, at least, he was charismatic. I liked his setup. He just seemed like a good guy. He's a good quarterback. I don't know where he slots as far as in the NFL, but I liked the whole quarterback situation and behind the scenes with Kirk Cousins.
Let's bring in Chris Rose from the NFL Network, the Chris Rose Rotation podcast. Good evening, sir. How are you?
How are you guys?
Excellent, thank you. Your assessment of Kirk Cousins, the 4-year, $180 million deal with $90 million fully guaranteed with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, they had to do it. Last year, they're ping-ponging between Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. So I bet you Kirk Cousins looked at that from afar and was like, oh, boy, I can't wait till my Achilles gets healthy. Because, Atlanta's got a lot of talent. Arthur Smith didn't always utilize it, but then again, he didn't have a quarterback to have it working. And when Raheem Morris at his introductory news conference basically says, hey, listen, we got to get the quarterback situation right, because if they had before this, I probably wouldn't be here. The question is, does Atlanta get on the same plane as San Francisco in the NFC? No. Are they as good as the Rams, who I think are an ascending team? Probably not. But I think they certainly can take the South away from Tampa Bay. And there's one other component to this. You have to remember, Atlanta still has a top 10 pick in the draft. They don't have to go. They can hold that spot And if J.J. McCarthy is there and the first three quarterbacks are gone, well, teams are going to want to pay a ransom for that spot. And Atlanta could move back a couple of slots. You've got teams at 11, 12, and 13 in Minnesota, Denver, and Las Vegas that don't have their quarterback of the future as of right now. And I bet you those three teams would be willing to give up a lot, and Atlanta could move back a couple of spots, still get an elite pass rusher, still get somebody that can help them out somewhere else, and make this team continue to jump up.
Does Russell Wilson make the Steelers a better team?
Yeah, I think he does. Now the question is, where do you rank them among the four quarterbacks in the division? Because we know that they had the fourth best quarterback room last year. So now where do you rank them?
Same.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I'm a Cleveland guy. Deshaun Watson has not played great, but I think it'd be a tough argument to say that Russell Wilson at this point of his career is better than Deshaun Watson. I know he played better than him last year, but I think overall, if you had to pick between now. The argument is that one guy counts $64 million against the cap, another guy costs you nothing if you're the Steelers. So I understand why they did it, but are they a Super Bowl team with him? I don't think so. I mean, I watched Russ play last year. I thought he was okay, but he does one of two things: he either throws it 60 yards or two. Like there's very little in between with him.
Chris Rose is our guest from the NFL Network, the Chris Rose Rotation podcast. Where do you think this leaves Justin Fields? Because there was a lot of speculation of connecting him to Atlanta, connecting him to Pittsburgh, right. And all of a sudden the carousel's going around and Justin Fields may be left without a seat.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me because he's good enough to start, but the problem is that there's a bunch of teams that are going to fill that quarterback position with guys in the draft. I didn't think he was ever going to go out to Las Vegas because the offensive coordinator from Chicago last year, Luke Getsy, is there now, and I don't think that was obviously a perfect match, those two. And he's too young to be a stopgap quarterback. I mean, that to me doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like Justin Fields, he hasn't even had his fifth-year option picked up yet. So the only places left, I mean, let's do this. Does he end up in Minnesota? It doesn't feel like that works in Kevin O'Connell's offense. I mean, could Seattle try and move on from Geno? Like, Mike McDonald, the new coach, hasn't been like, yeah, I love Geno. Like, that's our dude moving forward. But that still doesn't sound like it works either. And
maybe Vegas?
Other than that, I just told you that Luke Getsy's the offensive
yeah, that's true.
coordinator. Yeah, so I don't think so. So Denver, no, because Sean Payton has come out and said, I want a guy who's processing and all that sort of stuff, and that has been Justin Fields' trouble. Is that, he's been basically a one read and then go guy. And, that he hasn't grown up enough in that area. So that doesn't sound like it works either. I mean, he might end up being a backup. Like, could he be a backup in Philadelphia? Yeah, good.
You could see it. Well, a few running backs are already off the board, with the most notable being Saquon Barkley. Any surprises among the early running back signings?
Well, I suppose I'm a little surprised that the Packers moved on from Aaron Jones to take Josh Jacobs. Maybe a little bit, right? I mean, Aaron Jones has been kind of the offensive heart and soul of that team. He's been the connective tissue between the past and now the present with all those young receivers and tight ends they've got. I think it's a little risky because I think Josh Jacobs has kind of been up and down. I know Aaron Jones missed about a month last year, but when he came back, he was a significant difference maker. So to me, I don't know if you're paying Josh Jacobs some dough now. They're not, it'll be, I think the one to me that'll be interesting to see who gets who does Baltimore get? Like, are they now locked into Derrick Henry, or are they going to get a guy in the late second, early third round of the draft that they're going to hang their hat on next year?
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. And there have been some links, some rumors regarding Derrick Henry and the Dallas Cowboys, especially considering Tony Pollard left for Tennessee. Is that something maybe you could see coming to fruition?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Derrick Henry's a tough one for me. Like, I love the way he plays. I think he's an awesome dude. I just don't know if. I mean, I'm not seeing any 1,500-yard season, and I don't even feel like I'm seeing a 1,200-yard season out of him. You know, it's been interesting because people are like, "Yeah, look at the way these guys are getting paid." I don't know. Outside of Saquon and Josh Jacobs, are we talking about enormous money for everybody else? It's like 8, for a Tony Pollard. I think that's what DeAndre Swift got in Chicago, because it just feels like those guys are. I mean, pay Christian McCaffrey whatever you want, and Nick Chubb in Cleveland's obviously coming off another major knee injury, but when he was healthy, you were paying him elite money. The rest of it, I'm like, yeah, I might take my chances with the college game. I wouldn't pay. I guess my point is, I wouldn't pay Derrick Henry goo gobs of money to make him my lead back.
So with T. Higgins reportedly asking for a trade in Cincinnati, guess he hasn't been happy there. How do you see that playing out?
Well, wide receiver is arguably the deepest position of this draft. You could actually have 3 guys in, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Rome Odunze. Those guys are good enough to go in the top 6. I mean, all 3 of them, they could. They probably won't, but they're that good. And then the rest of the draft, you're going to have guys drafted in the 4th round this year that I think will end up being starters way sooner than most people anticipate. So T. Higgins, yeah, I get it. You want your long-term deal. You're pissed that you got franchise tag. I understand all that. But the Bengals aren't going to give you away for nothing. And what are they going to end up getting for him? I mean, won't teams just say, you know what, I'll wait till the 3rd round, and I could get a guy that could grow up to be T. Higgins very soon and pay him nothing. Teams they can't pay all this money that they're paying right now at every position. They're probably looking and saying the area where we'll save and wait for the draft is wide receiver. So I just don't see this. I don't see much happening. And if he does get traded, I don't see the Bengals getting like a 2 for him. I just don't.
Chris, I want to shift over to baseball for a second. Here in Toronto, there's a lot of people who are excited about Joey Votto signing the minor league deal. What do you make of that? Should we have any excitement, or maybe we should kind of calm down just a little bit?
Well, I think just as a non-Toronto sports fan, like, I'm good with Joey Votto going to Toronto. I think it's awesome. I think, we had the discussion today on our podcast on Baseball Today. Trevor Plouffe asked me, he said, do you think that if Joey Votto ends up making the big league team, does that jersey sale get in the top 10 this year? And I said yes, because I really believe that, having I don't know, is he going to end up being number 19 if he makes the squad? I have lost track. Is anybody 19 on the Blue Jays right now?
Well, we'll take a look at it. We'll get back to you before we say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a jersey that I think a lot of people would love to have. Sometimes when you get a star at the end of the career joining a team, you're like, ew, really? That doesn't look right. But this one could be kind of cool. So there's areas where he can help. He can still hit right-handed pitching. He's a great dude to have around. The only thing I would say is that he's got a lot of the same qualities that Justin Turner has, and Justin at this point is a better hitter than Joey Votto is at this point of his career.
So we're looking
Doesn't mean there's not room for both, but because they were going to have maybe maybe Vogelbach in that role.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. I think it's a decision between Vogelbach and Joey Votto, and they've got a couple weeks to figure it out. So Jose Batista wore number 19. That is not a retired number. I don't know if we have any current Blue Jays wearing number 19, but perhaps that will be Joey Votto. I believe they assigned him number, 37 or something like that. He just took it. Very low maintenance is Joey Votto right now because he's trying to make the team, and kind of hope he does because it would be a really fun story to cover with the Toronto Blue Jays. Chris, fantastic to have you as part of the show as always. Thank you for this.
I appreciate the time, guys. Take care.
That is Chris Rose from the NFL Network, the Chris Rose Rotation podcast. Are you guys seeing what's going on online between Tiki Barber and Saquon Barkley, two legends of the New York Giants? So Tiki Barber went off on his radio station today, basically saying that Saquon Barkley is dead to him. I don't know, because he left the Giants for a big contract with Philadelphia. Saquon just responded on Twitter, "You've been a hater since I got to New York. And all that dead to me talk, don't smile in my face when you see me." Oh, boy. Tiki Barber and Saquon Barkley are no longer on speaking terms. That is safe to say. Has been a hater. I mean, Saquon did go, I believe, number 3 overall in the same draft that yielded Josh Allen, and I think the Giants would probably like to have that one back.
Yeah, I heard Kaz talking about that on the way in because he's a big Giants fan. And he's like, it pains me because we could have had Josh Allen. Instead, we drafted a running back.
Yeah, that's tough. Ugh.
And he just
honestly,
and now he's an Eagle, and the Eagles spent a significant amount of money on it for a running back, more than the franchise tag. And you consider Philadelphia's had a pretty good run game over the last couple of years, just kind of finding dudes off the scrap heap. And they really anteed up for Saquon Barkley. That's an interdivisional transaction where you go from the Giants to the Eagles, and consider what happened to the Eagles. They just fell off a cliff in the second half of the season. They're shaking some things up offensively as well.
Dude, you know what? I wonder if teams are going to come around to making more of an investment in their run game. The way it used to, maybe not the way it used to be, but more than it currently is. Because how many times, Noodles, you do the show every day, Luke comes on a couple times a week, and he talks about teams that have no run game. He's like, you can't get anywhere in the league if you don't have a run game. But teams are so reluctant to spend money, and clearly the Eagles have said, we'll spend a little more because we believe Saquon can help us. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you're just only as good as your run game is going to take you.
That's totally fair. Go ahead, Noodle. Sorry.
I agree. I just when I see these spats, I think they're just so ridiculous. Like, I don't know why. Like, you take it to Twitter. Like, that's like. You got a problem with a guy, send him a text and be like, stop being a jerk. Or, it's so, I don't know. Like, I guess it is 2024 and people argue on Twitter and stuff, but like these guys are two grown ass men and they're going at it on Twitter and now, will it end up in a fist fight? Like, what do you think this all ends?
Maybe it's the undercard to Mike Tyson and Jake Paul is Saquon Barkley and Tiki Barber. But according to NFL insiders, the Giants never even made an offer to retain Saquon Barkley. So I don't really know why Tiki Barber's upset with him.
He just got to go along. He's got to go along with his business. It is interesting, the T. Higgins asking for a trade out of Cincinnati. What is he? Is he the third target there for Joe Burrow?
Probably number 2 behind Jamar Chase. But they didn't want to give him don't want to give him a long-term deal.
He was hurt last year a bunch. He kind of fell lower in the depth chart there. Calvin Ridley's another guy who's still not signed.
He'll be a hot target for somebody.
Right, but even him, was he target number 1? I guess he was in Jacksonville. He would have been target number 1 for sure, but I don't know. They both teams had a lot of targets for their quarterbacks. Pretty deep at the wide receiver position.
And we talked about Justin Fields with Chris when he was on the line. I kind of had a little bit of a, did I say Rafalski moment there? I don't know. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I kind of...
Did I say Rafalski?
Pretty much a did I say Rafalski, where I asked him, what do you think of Vegas? And he's like, I literally just addressed...
I did notice that, but I
literally just addressed that, you complete moron. I'm just nodding my head. I'm like, yeah, good job, Aaron. Excellent work. Yeah. Excellent work. So
Justin Fields is going to be a backup somewhere. He's not going to be a starter next year.
Well, it's amazing.
He's going to be a backup.
When the season ended and they were playing so well in Chicago, they're like, they're going to trade the first overall pick, keep Fields, build around him.
No way.
And that's clearly not happening. The Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. and you consider what's already happened. Like Russell Wilson just signed for the league minimum, and I think he's like right at the same type of level that Justin Fields is at. And that's not really a disrespect to either player. That's kind of where they both are as far as the ranking of quarterbacks in the National Football League. And I think maybe Fields in the right circumstances could do some different things considering his athleticism, but he can't throw the ball downfield.
But does he have help? Like, did he ever have help in Chicago, or was he just kind of left to be stranded there? They were terrible.
They traded the pick to bring in DJ Moore, remember, from Carolina, who's pretty good. But no, it's not like they had a star-studded cast of characters at receiver and tight end in Chicago. But I don't really know where Fields fits in. But I don't think that the Bears were expecting to recoup so little on that asset. Like, I bet you if you asked them at the end of the season, maybe we can get a first rounder. Maybe worst case, we get a second. Instead, it could be a late round pick where it's just a team taking a flyer on.
I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm curious to see how Russell Wilson and Mike Tomlin, like how that dynamic plays out, because Tomlin, like, he was spoiled for years when he had Big Ben there, and that was one constant that he never really had to worry about. And like, the defense has always been good there. That's never really been an issue. Now, like, there actually is, there's weapons there. They just don't, like, between Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, they haven't had that consistent quarterback. Is Russell Wilson that much of an upgrade over those two guys on paper?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but maybe he can find something with Tomlin.
You know what's so interesting about the Russell Wilson contract is the offset language in the deal. So basically, Denver's paying Pittsburgh or paying Wilson $39 million not to play for them, which is a remarkable amount of money. It's like, we want you so little, we're going to pay you $39 million to play elsewhere. But because of this offset language, let's say Russell Wilson signed for $20 million a year with another team. Denver would only be on the hook for the remaining $20 that was owed to Russell Wilson. But instead, because he signed for less than $2 million, Denver's on the hook for the other $38 or whatever that he's owed. So an incredible deal for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson's kind of putting the screws to Denver a little bit.
That's what he is.
In that, because he could have got a bigger deal from somebody. Like, I maintain belief that if Russell Wilson wanted $15 million a year from somebody in the NFL, he'd be able to find that contract somewhere. But he's like, no, I'm good. I'm already getting paid $39 million from Denver. I don't really need any more money. So Pittsburgh, league minimum, and let's build. It's like almost like the Bergeron deal with Boston the last couple of years, where it's, you know what, I could take less. I've made my money. Someone else paying my contract. That's the different aspect. But
I'm just not. I'm not convinced he goes to Pittsburgh and it's all good there now.
Oh, like, definitely.
I think they're still going to be like, the way they were last year. Yeah. I don't see them making any kind of significant improvement compared to last year.
And the other thing too is, to me, with Russell Wilson, he's a giant distraction. Like, it just seems like everywhere he goes, like, you're seeing him on the bird, like, I worked out for 8 hours. Remember they were flying to London or whatever?
Yeah, he was doing high knees or whatever. He had the compression pants on. But I wonder if Tomlin gets into him early, Noodles, and is like, that kind of, the shtick isn't really going to fly here. But with that being said, don't you think Sean Payton would have had those conversations too? And like, Sean Payton's a very well-respected coach too, just like Tomlin.
Payton inherited Russell Wilson, right? Tomlin's bringing him into his organization, so I suppose that's the only difference. That's going to be a really compelling storyline all season long. We'll keep you updated on any NFL moves that continue to happen throughout the course of the evening. It sounds like the Giants and the Panthers are getting close to consummating a big trade for Brian Burns, who's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. That'll be a significant deal if and when it is done. So we'll keep you updated on that as the evening continues. Last night was the Oscars, the Academy Awards. So we decided to do something a little bit special for the audience. It's called the OverDrive Oscars. We'll tell you about that next. Hour 3 continues. You're listening to OverDrive on TSN 1050. You're watching on TSN 2. Korolnek, Corrado, and McLennan here on this Monday afternoon, the day following the Academy Awards. So we decided to come together. Really, it was our producer, Chris Horvat, who's doing fantastic work behind the scenes. Yep. And you'll soon see it, I should say, on your screens, because he cultivated this idea and sprouting true brilliance.
Very well done. Very really professional. Very professional operation here.
That's how he operates. So without further ado, again, last night, the 96th annual Oscars. Why do they get to have all the fun, right? We should have some fun as well. This is the OverDrive Oscars, where we're going to look around the world of sports, maybe consider some of the things that have happened recently, may happen in the future. Let's kick off the festivities, gentlemen, with our first category for Best Trade Center Performance.
TSN 1050 presents a tradition like no other. The OverDrive Oscars. Here are the nominees for Best Trade Center Performance. Bruce Boudreau in Finding Gino, Wayne Simmons in Wayne's World, Jeff O'Neill in The Champ, Al's brother in Whatever This Is.
What was the story with Al's brother's outfit? Like
I don't
Noodles,
know.
like because he wasn't wearing, he didn't come out with you and Brian, right? So why was he wearing that? Did he come equipped with that like before the show? Like
there was like props sitting there, and he was like hanging out while we were putting our outfits on. And then I think it was Nicole Anderson or Carrie Gendron, and somebody was like, "Why don't you put these on?" So he put them on, and then he took a photo with us, and then he disappeared back into the drywall. I don't know where he went. Well, and then we walked out.
I mean, however it played out, I really did enjoy that picture. I don't think Al's brother should win this award. Maybe some serious consideration. For me, it's Bruce Boudreau wins this OverDrive Oscar. I mean, that guy just puts on a clinic year after year, well, the last 2 years anyways, at Trade Center. His skit with Gino Retta, him in The Office, I thought was spectacular as well. Noodles, I don't know how you're not nominated considering the travel concerns that you went through in order to make it on Friday. Maybe that's something we need to take up with the Academy, but Bruce Boudreau for me.
I'm going to go with Jeff O'Neill in The Champ because I was part of the skit. I feel like a supporting actor in this, and Rod Smith was unbelievable. Like his voice, it was just, everything was laid out perfect. There was a smoke machine, like all hell broke loose.
How did Rod not laugh? Like, how does Rod not start laughing through this?
He's a true pro. But it was
if you're watching on TSM2, it's up right now. Just
Noodles, was it your idea to bring the Gatorade bottle with water?
It was not my idea. O just said, "Hey, bring this and give me a little squirt." And I was like, "All right." And then he goes, "If you blast me in the face with this," like he goes, "I'm going to sucker you." Like I was like, "All right." I said, just because he brought the idea to the table, but a little water, all good. And then like Hayes was really good. I thought it was fun. We had a lot of fun there on a slow day. Like that's what I felt like. That was a slow burn.
You know that O had been researching like best boxing or UFC entrances. He had to have been because every step of the way was perfect. Like exactly how they would do it. Mine goes to Wayne Simmons. Ooh. First time on television for him, and I thought he sounded like a pro. Like he didn't have a lot of stumbles. He knew exactly what he was talking about. He was well prepared. It looked like he had been doing it for a long time. Like Wayne knows his stuff, and he showed that, and it was a great performance. Not easy, man. Going
Definitely
on TV
not.
and talking like that for your very first time, you could be a deer in the headlights. I was. I thought he did a great job.
Lots of great options. A very competitive category nonetheless. So 3 separate recipients of awards here to kick off the OverDrive Oscars. Let's keep it moving. We'll stick with the trade deadline for our next category. This is Best Trade Deadline Acquisition.
Here are the nominees for Best Trade Deadline Acquisition. Thomas Hertel in Surviving San Jose, Noah Hannafin in Anywhere But Canada, Jake Gensel in The Downfall of Dubas, Vladimir Tarasenko in Parliament Hill Hostage.
Wow. Brilliant names.
Yeah, they are.
Brilliant names.
Yeah.
Excellent work. Excellent work. I will kick this one off, maybe a little bit of a surprise, but I really like Jake Gensel in Carolina.
Not a surprise.
Simply because in the Eastern Conference, the top contenders really didn't make moves of the significance that we saw out west. I would argue that Carolina, bringing in Gensel and Kuznetsov, definitely at least one, but potentially 2 top 6 forwards. I really like the fit on the wing with Carolina. They needed more depth up front, and they picked it up in a major way. Jake Gensel in The Downfall of Dubas is my Oscar recipient.
Unfortunately for Kyle, The Downfall of Dubas is kind of still, remains to be seen how that movie ends here with the way things are going in Pittsburgh. But I agree, and my award goes to Jake Gensel as well, because watching Carolina last year in the playoffs play against Florida, offense was hard to come by. They have a lot of the same kind of guy, and it makes them a hard team to play against, but they need that guy, that like game breaker. And that's what Gensel has been in the playoffs. Like the first year he was in the playoffs with Pittsburgh, I think he had 13 goals in 25 games. As of 2 years ago in the playoffs, he had 8 goals in 7 games. Like he is a playoff scorer, and that addressed a serious need for Carolina.
So I was going to make it a 3-pack and go with Jake Gensel as well, but I'm going to pivot because I think Tarasenko's a really good fit in Florida. Like, and watching him up close and personal in Ottawa, he still can play. He was a plus 15 when he got traded. You know, he uses his body well, uses his shot. I think he would be a nice fit. Here, keep in mind too, Ottawa was handcuffed. He had a no-move clause that said, I want to go to Florida. So they basically had to make the best deal. That was the other thing. People were like, oh, it's an underwhelming return. When you can only trade with one team, then you've got to maximize what you can get. So
Billy Zito threw them a life jacket there.
Literally.
Like he's like, he could have said, this guy only wants, I'll give you a 5th and see you later. Like I thought Billy Zito kind of came to the table and said, listen, I'm not going to give you above market value, but you're going to have to get 75%, 75 cents on the dollar here because you're negotiating with one team.
I agree. The other one, I think the one that sent shockwaves through the world was Thomas Hertl. Like, I mean, Vegas does it again. Like that, whether he's going to be available to them, whether he ends up hitting the ground running, all of that type of stuff. Nobody saw that. And the other thing, it came at 259. So it was like it was almost like Vegas was like, wait, we're going to be the last transaction, and then we'll slide it in there at 259. Nothing to see here, folks, but it's Tarasenko, but a close second for me is Hertl, just the explosion he made.
Our third category, and we're going to stick with the National Hockey League here. We examine the nominees for the Hart Trophy.
Here are your nominees for the Hart Trophy. Nathan McKinnon in All Nate Dogs Go to Heaven. Connor McDavid in McJesus Christ Superstar. Austin Matthews in The Tales of Pablo Escobar Down. Nikita Kucherov in From Russia with Gloves.
So good. Great job, Cheese.
Chris,
unbelievable.
I have no idea why you work at TSN. You're far too talented to work at TSN 1050. Excellent work. And man, this is a challenging one. And this has been kind of going up and down in so many different directions for a significant period of time. Remember, Austin Matthews not long ago was 14-1 on FanDuel. I believe he's still, alongside McKinnon, the betting favorite. I'm going to go with Connor McDavid here to win the Hart Trophy. And we're looking at the odds right now on TSN2. McKinnon is the favorite, followed by McDavid. Matthews, I guess after 3 lackluster games this past week, plus 350, followed by Kucherov. McDavid is just 8 points behind McKinnon in the Art Ross race, has 2 games in hand to the Oilers on the Avalanche. That 3-point performance yesterday against Pittsburgh, he was utterly dominant. I think we're in for an absolutely filthy finish to the year for Connor McDavid. I think he's going to leapfrog McKinnon for the Art Ross, leapfrog him for the Hart, and take home both awards. That's my pick.
It's a very sound argument, and this conversation has been happening for a while now. It's going to continue to happen, and it feels like the number one choice flip-flops, and you can make so many different compelling cases for all of these guys. As of right now, I would probably go with Nikita Kucherov based on the fact that he is providing essentially 50% of the offense for Tampa Bay. And they're not what they used to be, clearly, but without him, this team's not even they're not even remotely close to the playoff picture. I just think he does so much for that group that's somewhat depleted and somewhat struggles to produce offense, and it's hard to ignore, being that integral to what your team does on any given night.
Yeah, I mean, great arguments. You can make one for Matthews as well, pace for 70, all of that fun stuff. I am going to go with McKinnon. I feel like in watching him live and watching how competitive he's been, there has been some adversity in Colorado with some injuries, and you look at players that had to be out with off-ice stuff, all of that type of stuff. Like, to me, he's had the most consistent performance. Keep in mind, like, McDavid has dragged his team right out of the gutter. Matthews the Leafs have been up and down. He's been quite consistent. Kucherov's team is going to struggle to make the playoffs, although I think they will. McKinnon, from day one, has just kept his team near the top. And that's where the most consistent guy for me has been McKinnon, so that's why I'm going to go with it.
This is as good as a Hart Trophy race as we've seen.
Noodles, is this going to be the closest Hart Trophy voting that you've seen since you've been doing this job?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm part of the voting class, but I think there's a compelling argument for all of these guys. And then maybe you could throw a goalie in there. Maybe you could throw Hellebuck in there if Winnipeg continues to it's just I think there's no wrong answer, but it's going to be who finishes these last 15 to 20 games strong and kind of pushes through and just forces everybody to go, yeah, that's the guy.
From some of the best performers in the NHL to some of the worst. That's where we turn for our next category here on the OverDrive Oscars. Here are the nominees for most disappointing NHL team.
Here are your nominees for the most disappointing NHL team. The Ottawa Senators in Repent for Your Sins. The Pittsburgh Penguins in No Country for Old Pens. The New Jersey Devils in No One Cares What People in New Jersey Think. The Buffalo Sabres in Drowning at the Anchor Bar.
Those are some good names for films. I would go see any of those movies.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Pens, my favorite. No Country for Old Men, one of the great movies of the last 25 years. Noodles, why don't we start with you? Who gets your OverDrive Oscar for most disappointing NHL team?
It's just because of the expectation. It'll be the Sens because I cover them every night. Start of the season, I really thought that they had turned the corner as far as some of the players maturing. Tim Stützle had 90 points last year. Jake Sanderson, I think, is a superstar. I haven't changed my opinion on those players, but I expected them to be in that playoff hunt, maybe a couple points out and really pushing hard, and it hasn't happened. And to the point where, I think they've lost 7 in a row right now. And they had a 6-banger early in the season that cost DJ Smith his job. So to me, this is from expectation to reality. It's probably been the biggest drop for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with Ottawa. How could you not be? But I don't know how you guys felt, but coming into the season, I was willing to give the Penguins the benefit of the doubt and just say that last year was a one-off. There was some weird stuff happening. They'll find a way to turn it around. They still have a good nucleus, even though they're aging. They add a couple pieces. Maybe they're right back in the playoff picture. It obviously hasn't been the case for Pittsburgh, so that's going to be my answer. I didn't expect it to be this big of a drop-off for Pittsburgh to the point now where you watch this team play. And I watched that game yesterday, Noodles, and I dread having to watch the Penguins, but they're playing the Oilers, so you have to watch it. It's like they're tough to watch. That's been the story of Pittsburgh basically this whole year.
Yeah, they're getting dummied of late. I think they've been outscored 15-1 in their last 3 games. Have the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's not going to get any better. My pick here is the New Jersey Devils. I picked them to win the President's Trophy this year, and they could very well miss the playoffs. The goaltending has been disastrous all year. Losing Dougie Hamilton early. Jack Hughes has been hurt. Timo Meyer's been underwhelming there. I like the New Jersey Devils as the NHL's most disappointing NHL team. Our final category here on the OverDrive Oscars. I wish I had the British voice like our probably AI-generated Oscars narrator. An amazing year for rookies taking their respective leagues by storm. We're going to wrap things up by awarding the best performance by a first-year player. These are your nominees.
Here are the nominees for best performance from a first-year player. Victor Wembanyama in Unidentified Freakish Object. Connor Bedard in The Sad House on Madison. CJ Stroud in Deshaun with the Wind. Corbin Carroll in That Damn Carol Baskin.
A little homage to Tiger King.
Wow. Remember the early days of COVID watching Tiger King?
I think that's all anyone talked about.
Oh, God.
Tiger King. Those were really the darkest days of our society, but it does bring back some good memories, or maybe just memories.
Some weird memories.
Weird memories might be the case. Frank, do you want to lead us off with your pick?
I might surprise you on this one. I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. Wembanyama has been unbelievable. Connor Bedard has met or exceeded expectations, but at one point during this NFL season, we were talking about CJ Stroud in legitimately MVP conversations, and that's not an easy thing to do. And for him to jump in Houston, where they were so bad before he got there, Deshaun Watson moves on, and for him to do what he did and not just be great with his rookie class, but be great compared to the rest of the league that was already established, very difficult to ignore that.
I'm going to go with Wembanyama. Like, he's dominant, and watching him, it reminds me of Kramer at the dojo. Like, it's an adult with children. Like, he's so big and so fluent for such a big man. Like, and wait till he fills out. Like, wait, you add another 30 pounds onto that frame, he's going to be completely dominant.
I'm with you, Noodles. Wembanyama is my pick as well. And if you look at the last 6 weeks in the NBA, he has more blocks than anyone has steals and blocks combined. And he's doing it in a huge way. Like, the block numbers are just crazy. I'm with you as he continues to learn the game and get better and better and progress in the sport. I mean, what Wembanyama is going to do in this league is going to be so much fun to watch. He's been exceptional in his rookie season. Wembanyama, my pick as well, in the first annual Oscars, the best performance by a first-year player. Fantastic work by Chris Horvat on those category names.
Unbelievable.
We got to get that up on the TikTok and the Instagram and the Twitter as well, because that was some really good stuff there. Thank you for the hard work, Mr. Horvat. We have some updates on Brian Burns and the NFL. Man, it does not stop right now. The signings, the trade rumors continue to percolate online. We'll fill you in on everything you need to know as the third hour of Overdrive continues. Winding things down here on this Monday afternoon, you're listening and watching to Overdrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2, Korolnek, Corrado, and McLennan. We're talking a lot about the NFL today. Kirk Cousins getting a huge contract from the Atlanta Falcons, $180 million, $90 million of which is guaranteed. Keep in mind, he likes that
very much.
Off an Achilles tear, 35 years old. I'll take $90 million guaranteed. Thank you very much.
Falcons are desperate, man. They need a quarterback.
Very much. And on the subject of desperation, the New York Giants have acquired Brian Burns, who's one of the top pass rushers in the NFL. But get this. So a couple of years ago, the LA Rams desperately wanted Brian Burns in season. They offered Carolina a second-round pick in 2023, a first-round pick in 2024, and another first-round pick in 2025. That trade was declined. Brian Burns today was traded for a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick.
Wow.
There's an old saying, strike while the iron is hot.
No
and
kidding,
Carolina did the exact opposite. That is nauseating.
Carolina is such a tire fire, though. Like, they are such a disaster of an organization.
What an embarrassment. And I know all the guys who were running the operation at that time are long gone, but they must be sitting there like, whoa.
Dude, they're long gone.
What were we doing then?
Guys like that, like, they leave such a disaster for whoever has to come in and pick up the pieces. Like, that's just one example, but you get a bad regime in there, and it's like, it takes, I don't know, it could take a decade sometimes to, like, clean up the mess that some guys leave you.
Light years. Butch Goring came on our show years ago and said Mike Milbury set the Islanders organization back light years. Like, not just a couple of years, light years. We don't even, because of what was going on.
That was on this show, he said that?
I think so. It was either this show or our lunch, show or whatever, at least lunch.
That's like almost like a famous quote now. Like, I see that all the time. I didn't know he said that to you guys.
It was, Butch Goring came on, I swear it was either me and Hayes or maybe had just come on the show or whatever. He said Mike Milbury put the Islanders back light years.
That's incredible that it happened on your show. I see that quote everywhere.
There's been some amazing moments here on this radio station. Remember Walt Kachuk last year on First Up, where he's like, our players are soft, and they're waiting around for Matthews and Marner's autographs after the game in reference to the Florida Panthers, and lo and behold, they completely turned it around, go all the way to the Cup final, and now they're the best team in the NHL.
You know
this year.
What you guys shouldn't do in the morning? Don't interview parents of the Panthers or the Bruins. Don't wake anyone up before the first round of the playoffs.
Probably a good idea. Although I don't know if you can really, do anything that negatively when it comes to the Panthers. I mean, they couldn't be any hotter. Boston has beaten Toronto 7 straight times, so I think both of those teams would feel pretty good about that matchup.
Noodles, what do you think Boston does when it comes playoff time with their goaltending rotation? Like, you think it still is a split, or do you think they pick one guy and go with that guy?
They're leaning Swayman, but I would split. The reason being is last year they ran with Ullmark, and then Ullmark had that gap in Game 5, and then Game 6 he looked injured.
He was banged up.
Looked injured in Game 6, and then they went with Swayman in Game 7. To me, if you go with the rotation, you stick with the whole team understands it, they respect it, because what happens in football, I've heard this saying, if you have 2 starting quarterbacks, you don't have any. And I think that's what is equal with if you have 2 goaltenders that can play, what happens, you're always questioning, well, why isn't the other guy in there? So I think you just go with what got you there.
Yeah.
Well, we got some more breaking news in the NFL. Austin Eckler signing a 2-year deal with the Washington Commanders. So another of the top running backs off the board. It'll be a very busy night in the NFL. We'll keep you updated as we can here at TSN 1050. Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure.
Great job today. Very good job.
I thought we had a great show. Yeah. A great show. Neither of you are on the program tomorrow. I am still here. I believe Al's brother and Dave Feschuk will be with me, so I'm looking forward to it. So on behalf of everybody here on TSN 1050, I will see you tomorrow. You fellas take care. We'll see you then.